The Ukrainian military struck the Novokubishevsk oil refinery in the Samara region. This facility is located 1,000 kilometers from the front line. The plant produces automotive and aviation fuel, as well as diesel for military needs. Also at night, Ukrainian drones hit the logistics hub of the Ozon company. This is also in the Samara region. And in the Bryansk region, repeaters used to control drones with which the aggressor country's army terrorizes Ukrainian cities and villages were destroyed. Also, there are reports online about a drone attack on the port in the city of Yeysk. This is in the Krasnodar Krai. Preliminary reports indicate that a vessel was damaged there. So, the reality of the Ukrainian front is a war of robots and unmanned systems. Already today, ground-based robotic systems are delivering supplies to the front line, evacuating the wounded, and even fighting in place of humans by opening fire on the enemy. And here is our Olha Kosenko. She visited a training ground where soldiers of the 56th Separate Motorized Infantry Mariupol Brigade tested an attack UGV droid. Let's watch the exclusive footage together.
The soldiers are loading the Browning machine gun that the attack UGV droid is equipped with. Final preparations, and the robot starts engaging the targets. It misses. Adjustment is needed.
Yeah, make sure you hold that down too. I'll try to fire now to see where we need to go, up or down.
The second attempt is more successful.
Oh, right on the stump.
The UGV is moved to another point and opens fire again. The operators practice shooting at targets at different distances to improve accuracy.
When we arrive at the positions, our visual sensors, our cameras, we have to calibrate them relative to the barrel and have to calculate the curvature of the flight and the bullet drop. Aim higher than the target to hit at a distance, for example, up to 500 meters, up to 600, up to 750, up to a kilometer, as we were just doing.
The droid, explains its operator Andriy, can destroy both enemy personnel and equipment.
We can conduct aimed fire by coordinates and repel, for example, an enemy offensive, large groups, vehicles, motorcycles. Well, like they also come in on transport, and this machine gun pierces armored vehicles very well.
The enemy hunts for ground-based robotic systems, as they understand that nowadays they are crucial for supplying positions with everything necessary: water, food, fuel, drones, and more. They often hit them. The soldiers of the 56th Separate Motorized Infantry Mariupol Brigade try to save every damaged robotic ground system. But spare parts are needed for repairs, so they are asking for help to purchase them via the QR code you see on the screen.
First and foremost, Starlinks, then circuit boards, a lot of cameras. We've already had more than one robotic ground system, let's say, hit. That is, we've dismantled them, pulled them out, and we're reinstalling these robotic ground systems from scratch, and then they continue to work.
You can't do without robots in modern warfare, explains Roman, the chief sergeant of the 2nd Battalion. After all, they carry out missions where it is extremely dangerous for a human.
Our priority is saving the lives of the soldier, sergeant, officer, and so on.
Ola Kosenko, especially for my Ukraine, United News Marathon.
The Odesa region has been under a massive enemy attack all day today. The main target is Chornomorsk. It is already known that 3 people have been wounded throughout the day. A private home and a summer house were damaged. An agro-industrial enterprise was also hit. The shelling was combined. Drones, cruise missiles, jet drones, guided aerial bombs, and Kak-59 missiles were flying. It was loud in the region at night as well. 1 person is known to have been wounded. A railway station building near Odesa in Rozdilna was damaged. Also damaged were a residential 5-story building, an industrial enterprise, and, well, the training base of the Chornomorets football club. The enemy also hit several energy facilities. Because of this, there are power and water outages in some settlements, and partially in Odesa. Restoration work has already begun, but it will take time, energy workers note. 3 dead and 15 injured. The enemy launched 7 strikes with guided aerial bombs on the Zaporizhzhia region. They hit the private sector in the village of Kushuhum. Residential houses and a school were damaged there. Among the injured is a child, a 13-year-old boy. And at noon, Russia attacked the Kyiv region with ballistic missiles. In the Borispil district, there are 2 dead and 8 injured. Among them is a child, as reported by the regional military administration. A warehouse, a parking lot, cars, and a gas station were damaged. And at night, a railway enterprise in the Darnitsky district of the capital was hit by a ballistic missile. An employee died there. In Kherson, the explosions have not ceased since the night. At least 6 people have been wounded. They were injured as a result of drone attacks on the Korabelny and Centralny districts of the city. A shopping center also became a target for the enemy. It was the only one in the city that was still operating. A massive fire broke out there, which spread to all the shops. This center burned down completely.
As of this morning, there are already 6 wounded. Among them are 2 municipal workers who were simply cleaning up trash. A Russian drone dropped explosives on them. The women are currently in the hospital. Also at night, the Russians attacked a shopping center with a Shahed drone. Thank God there were no casualties, but the infrastructure was also completely destroyed.
The enemy is very actively using Shahed-type UAVs. Just in the last 24 hours, they struck the Tavria Fi in the city of Kherson with 3 such UAVs. It is worth noting that the enemy does this regularly, striking the civilian sector, striking critical infrastructure, striking residential buildings.
3 people are currently considered missing in Kryvyi Rih after enemy Shahed drones hit a shopping mall. The Russians struck it the day before in broad daylight, at a time when the complex was full of visitors. This attack claimed the lives of at least 16 people, and 130 were wounded. The emergency rescue operation is still ongoing. Expert services are being hindered by constant air threats. Moreover, intelligence warns that Russia is planning further strikes on shopping centers. Irina Nosachova will tell us how the city is recovering after the cynical attack.
The enemy strikes hit right in the middle of the shopping center, causing quite a bit of destruction. Right here was a gallery of shops. Now it's just ruins. The city is slowly recovering after the horrific enemy strike. The Russians attacked the largest shopping center in Kryvyi Rih with a Shahed drone yesterday evening. A fire broke out, and when emergency workers arrived to rescue the victims and deal with the aftermath of the attack, the occupiers struck a second time. Sophia works in one of the shops. At the moment of the first strike, she was in a shelter. I saw the second Shahed hit from outside.
Everyone was very scared, worried, shaking and crying. There were a lot of these napkins here. They were all covered in blood.
Bloodied people are lying right next to the impact site. Passers-by and police officers are providing aid to the victims before the ambulance arrives. Among the 130 wounded, 23 are children.
I understand that it hurts a lot.
People whose relatives were inside the shopping and entertainment complex at the time of the strike are gathering nearby. They are waiting for any news at all. The number of victims is constantly rising. Colleagues from neighboring regions rush to assist the local emergency responders. 130 people were injured. More than 20 are in critical condition, including 5 children.
An explosion occurred behind me. I was thrown back by the blast wave. I fell to my knees and kept running. I was hit by shrapnel on both sides.
Shrapnel wounds are extremely severe because they are very difficult to treat. They are very dangerous in terms of damage to organs and systems. They are all polytraumas with impaired functions of various systems and organs.
The cleanup of the attack's aftermath is ongoing. Today is a day of mourning in Kryvyi Rih and throughout the Dnipropetrovsk region. Reporting from Kryvyi Rih, Irina Nosachova, Yevhen Lopatnichenko, We Are Ukraine, United News Marathon.
The European Union has condemned the Russian strike on Kryvyi Rih. The head of European diplomacy, Kaja Kallas, called the attack on the shopping center a targeted act of terror aimed at making Ukrainian cities uninhabitable. Kallas also emphasized that pressure on Moscow must be increased so that it ends the war. European Union foreign and defense ministers will discuss further support for Ukraine, including strengthening air and missile defense, as early as the beginning of September. And in the morning, the Russians launched a massive attack on the Poltava region. They struck a railway infrastructure facility with drones. A fire broke out there. This was reported by the regional military administration. At another location, an enemy drone hit a distribution center of one of the commercial enterprises. And when the rescuers arrived there, the occupiers struck again. State emergency service vehicles were damaged. No people were injured. There was also a hit on the territory of an agricultural cooperative. Germany will provide Ukraine with 50 million euros in humanitarian aid. This was announced by Johann Wadiful, head of the German Foreign Ministry. He is visiting Kyiv today. These funds will be directed to organizations that provide urgent assistance to residents of frontline regions. Berlin will also contribute 10 million euros to the NATO Ukraine Support Fund. In particular, the money will go towards energy supply for the armed forces of Ukraine, equipment for hospitals, and anti-drone defense systems. The head of the German Foreign Ministry also announced that Berlin is in negotiations with European allies and the United States of America regarding additional Patriot systems for Ukraine.
I will continue these discussions next week as I have agreed with all my colleagues, and the impressions from this trip will be of great importance for this. This once again underscores the urgent need to support Ukraine with additional air defense systems. I have laid out these arguments and all the discussions went well. I am confident that we can achieve something. In any case, I once again emphasize the urgency of this matter.
Ukraine is eager to accelerate the implementation of the Freya project, as it is precisely what should strengthen our defense against ballistic threats. This was stated by Minister of Foreign Affairs Andriy Sybiha after a meeting with his German counterpart Johann Wadiful. According to Mr. Sybiha, there are no doubts about the implementation of the project. The main question now is, how quickly will the partners make the necessary decisions?
In terms of timeframes, a truly extraordinary result has already been achieved. Zelensky has united the leaders. This year, we created a coalition, an anti-ballistic coalition, and in a unique format, because in addition to leaders, in addition to the top leadership of the state, manufacturers are present in this coalition.
France will provide Ukraine with interceptor missiles for air defense. Emmanuel Macron announced this on social media following a phone conversation with Volodymyr Zelensky. The French president also stated that his country will continue cooperation within the framework of the anti-ballistic coalition, which was launched last year. According to Mr. Macron, it is important that all countries possessing relevant defense equipment also join in the protection of Ukraine. Mr. Macron also promised to increase pressure on Russia until it ceases hostilities. The Russian central bank's gold reserves have fallen to their lowest level since the beginning of 2020. This year, gold reserves have decreased by 50 tons, or 1.6 million troy ounces. Bloomberg reports this. Over the last 7 months, the value of Russia's gold reserves has decreased by nearly $34 billion. And the Kremlin's entire gold reserve is estimated at over 2,000 tons of the precious metal. Moscow has to sell it, as well as foreign currency, to patch holes in the budget. Its replenishment has decreased significantly due to international sanctions. Actually, the Russian economy is sinking deeper and deeper into crisis. In just half a year, the federal budget deficit has reached 6.5 trillion rubles. And this is already 70% higher than the figure that was planned for the entire year of 2026. However, despite this, the Kremlin is not yet ready to economize on the war. On the contrary, more expensive oil has given Moscow additional financial resources. But will this money last long? And how much is the Kremlin spending on the war right now? Victoria Yarishko looked into this.
Russia's economic problems are not yet acute or painful enough for Putin to call off the war against Ukraine. After all, the rise in global oil prices has provided the Russian budget with additional revenue. Since the beginning of the year, the cost of oil has soared by almost 40%.
At the very moment right now, if you take a close look at the current oil quotes, you will see that oil is trading steadily at the level of $92 for Brent crude.
As a result of the price increase, the Russian economy received about $40 billion in additional funds just between April and July. Thanks to this, the Kremlin will be able to continue the war against Ukraine at least until next spring, a European intelligence official told Fox News. At the same time, the new revenues do not solve Russia's economic problems. Its budget deficit has already exceeded annual forecast.
The Russian budget deficit as of now is approaching 7 trillion rubles. A large sum, and how will they patch it up?
The Kremlin is trying to cover the shortage of funds from several sources. It is selling government bonds and collecting more taxes from the population and companies. But how long can it last like this?
Right now, Russia is effectively trying to squeeze out of the economy everything that it allowed it to accumulate during the time before this. However, the problem is that there isn't much left to squeeze out of this economy. And the resources to cover the shortfall in oil and gas revenues, which Russia is used to living on and to which it has adapted, are not that plentiful.
Right now, the Russian Federation is spending almost 40% of its entire budget on the security and defense sector. That's about $200 billion, and the vast majority of this goes directly to the war.
This is about 15 to 20% of budget expenditures, and we understand that this is a record level that Russia has never approached in its entire history.
For one Iskander ballistic missile, Moscow shells out about $2.5 million, and in a single attack on Ukraine, it can launch nearly 50 missiles. That's already over $100 million. And this is at a time when, in the remote regions of the Russian Federation, people in apartment buildings still have to run to outdoor toilets. Today, there are wooden houses here, even 8 under the roof of the house, and people on the street. And today's economic problems are unlikely to force Putin to end the war, experts believe. They say the dictator would rather cut funding for medicine and education.
We understand that Russia's budget will adapt to the ideas and desires to continue the military operation. This will be reflected in one thing. Russians will start living poorer. Russians will start seeing slower updates to certain social things. Fewer roads will be built. Fewer parks will be built. All the products that are in the stores, they will become simpler.
Besides this, the Kremlin fears a popular uprising like fire and spares no expense to keep Russians in a vice grip.
They will continue to significantly increase their financial spending on the repressive apparatus, which is something they have been doing consistently since 2022. Furthermore, they will certainly try to maintain their current high levels of spending on the military sector as well.
So to stop the Russian Federation, a significantly stronger economic blow is needed.
What will be able to force Russia to enter into negotiations? First is hyperinflation. Second is the depletion of resources they can use to finance the budget deficit.
A critical reduction in the Federation's resources in the immediate future is unlikely. However, with each passing day, the Kremlin's capabilities are declining. International sanctions and the defense forces of Ukraine are working towards this, and together they are giving Putin more and more reasons to think.
Ammunition or fuel is not being supplied to the front line. When there is no work, when there is no money, once again, it's about survival. The third reason is economic problems when production stops. Our legendary armed forces of Ukraine are doing the right thing by striking oil infrastructure, by striking centralized logistics facilities, and by striking wildberries.
In just the last few months, Ukrainian strikes have disabled up to 40% of Russia's oil refining capacity. And even Putin has admitted that the attacks are already affecting the Federation's economy. Victoria Yarishko, we are Ukraine United News Marathon.
The European Union hopes to force Putin to the negotiating table with the help of sanctions lists in the coming months. European officials are preparing to adopt the most extensive package of restrictions against Russia since the beginning of the war. At least that is what the head of EU foreign policy, Kaja Kallas, has stated. However, without going into any specific details, she firmly emphasized that the international pressure on Moscow must be significantly increased until the Kremlin finally decides to stop its ongoing aggression. Meanwhile, Bloomberg writes that the EU is preparing sanctions against more than 1,600 companies that are helping Russia in the war against Ukraine. What are the prospects for adopting a new sanctions package? Yana Hrishina looked into this.
Europe is expanding its sanctions lists on the largest scale since the beginning of Russian aggression in Ukraine. This is its reaction to the deadly July attacks by the Russian Federation.
We are not talking about another sectoral package right now, but about adding new individuals involved in the shelling of Ukrainian cities and the killing of civilians. It is known that about 1,600 individuals and companies associated with the Russian military-industrial complex, human rights violations, and participation in Russia's hybrid operations will be included in the list of restrictions. Footage that has flown around all world media. Police officers on the steps of a smoke-filled shopping center in Kryvyi Rih are applying a tourniquet to one of the visitors. He was inside the building when the Russians attacked the shopping center with drones in broad daylight. The Belgian foreign minister also came under Russian shelling this week during a visit to Kyiv. The meeting with our top diplomat was held in a shelter. At that moment, Russian drones were flying towards the capital. So the Belgian minister spoke again about the need to use frozen Russian assets for the benefit of Ukraine, but continued to insist on legal security guarantees for the kingdom.
We do not have any fundamental objections to using these funds to support Ukraine. At the same time, if necessary, we will need significant expert assistance. We must find a legally sound path that will allow us to minimize all these risks. This issue should not create the impression that Belgium has a fundamental reluctance to help Ukraine and provide it with the necessary financial resources.
A new package of anti-Russian sanctions was announced by the EU's top diplomat following the intensification of shelling in Ukraine. He promises that it will be the largest since the beginning of the war. European Union sanctions have already cost Russia dearly, depriving the Russian war machine of over 1 trillion euros. And for the autumn, I am preparing the most extensive list of sanctions since the beginning of the war. After their adoption, the total number of Russian entities subject to sanctions will immediately increase by 1/3. The pressure must constantly increase until Moscow ends the war. Kaja Kallas, High Representative of the European Union for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy. However, will it be possible to adopt the restrictions promised by Kallas promptly and in full? After all, to secure the votes of Greece, Germany and Portugal for the last 21st package, Brussels had to exclude Russian LNG, cod and pollock from the list. So Brussels has effectively proposed simplifying the mechanism for adopting sanctions. This concerns personal restrictions. Instead of waiting for EU summits, it is proposed to approve them monthly at meetings of the Foreign Affairs Council. From Brussels, Anna Hrishina. We are Ukraine, Marathon United News.